Hi, it's Eva here at Bariva Creative, and I can't remember what we're talking about today. And today I'm going to be showing you how I make rolled paper beads. These are beads that I make into some fun jewelry, and some of that is available at my Etsy shop, so definitely check that out for inspiration, or if you don't want to make it yourself, just buy some from me. But if you do want to make them yourself or have some fun ideas with other paper, then follow the rest of this video and learn how to make some fun paper beads with me. Alright, let's get to this. I found this fabulous little music book at my local thrift store. I was simply looking for something with musical notes in it, so it really doesn't matter what the book is as long as it's disposable. So I'm just going to go through and tear out a couple of pages, and we are going to get those sized correctly so that it is easiest for me to roll them later. It's not super easy to roll really wide or very long strips of paper. So I like to use about a half sheet of paper. So for this book, I was tearing them in half. I have done it with things like hymnals before, and that works great with just a single-sized piece of paper. It also depends on the thickness of the paper and how thick you want your beads. So just kind of play around with the size and shape of the paper and figure out how you like it. I'm using this handy little cutter to divide my paper up nice and easy, and it gets it a little more square than scissors. And here I'm just going to pull out some skewers. These are just regular bamboo skewers from the grocery store, and some handy glue. I love this kind. It dries really fast and holds really well. Next, we're going to trim our paper. We're going to cut off the margin. You want the very last edge of paper, like the back edge of the paper, to be the most interesting, because that's what's actually going to be on the outside of the bead. Everything else kind of gets wrapped into the middle, but that last half inch to maybe a 3/4 of an inch is the part that you will be seeing. So I just put a little bit of glue about 2 inches from the inside edge, the edge that I will be wrapping into the center of the bead, and that helps me hold kind of that first bit of glue, and then you just kind of work it a bit and get it rolled around the skewer. Again, this is easier with thinner papers, so I struggled a tiny bit with this paper because it was slightly thicker, but you can see I ended up just rolling it, and it wasn't too bad at all. And then once you get to the very back edge, you put another layer of glue, and this bit of glue holds everything together, so make sure it's very well stuck down before you set the roll of paper aside. And then we're just going to start with our next one. We're just going to roll up a bunch of these. As you can see, I'm just selecting the notes and kind of placing them in a way that I think is going to be best on the final bead, and just kind of thinking about that throughout the whole process is essentially the most important part. You want to make sure these are rolled onto the skewers nice and tightly. If they're too loose, it's going to be kind of painful to do some of the future steps. You don't want it to slide around too much, but if it does, it's okay, you can kind of work with it. But definitely the tighter the bead, the better, and it lasts longer if the beads are tighter. So here I'm going to try doing a sort of spiral look by cutting the paper so that the music notes run in a diagonal, and we're going to see how that looks. And of course, you have to make sure that your little buddy retrieves any lost rolls of notes. As you're gluing things down, the neater you can keep it, the better. So if there's little edges like this that aren't quite fully glued, come back and make sure they're glued. The tighter you get this part and the cleaner you do each step, the cleaner the final bead will turn out. So here I'm just using an X-Acto blade to kind of roll around the skewer and cut through all of that paper that we've laid on there. I am again selecting where I'm cutting and making sure not to break the music notes in places that don't make sense. And this is just an aesthetic thing. Probably don't divide A's nose and that sort of thing if they're connected. So you can see here I'm just kind of pressing really hard and rolling it around until it divides. You don't want to cut through that skewer because the skewer does make it easier to spray on the coating we're going to add in about a moment. Next, I'm going to roll up a couple of polymer beads. These are just going to be accent colors, and I've made this mint green that I think is going to look great for this bracelet that I'm making. So I'm just going to roll this into little circles, and we are going to make beads out of them. Definitely check out the link here and at the end of the video for our other polymer clay video. So yeah, I'm just rolling about pea-sized beads here. You can kind of do any size you want, but I like to keep it about the width of the paper beads so that they're all kind of the same width once they're all strung together. And then I'm using a toothpick to poke through both sides and make sure I have a nice little hole all the way through our beads here. And just read the instructions on your polymer clay for baking times and temperatures and get those beads cooked. Here I'm using a box to punch those skewers into the side of. This allows me to hold the beads sort of suspended so that I don't have to lay them on a surface and do them one side at a time. I can kind of rotate them around. Today I'm going to be using a shellac that I found at my local hardware store. This is a hypoallergenic and non-toxic formula, so it's great for things that come in contact with people, like jewelry. And I did 3 coats with 15 minutes of drying time between each, and then I let it dry for about 4 hours minimum, kind of at the end, so that everything was fully dry before I went and beaded everything together. You want to make sure that your paper is coated fully because paper is super porous, and even the littlest thing like sweat and whatnot will work its way into destroying those beads if it's not fully sealed up. And here you can see I'm just wiggling things around and getting them all loosened and popping them off that skewer. It's actually pretty easy and great for ASMR. Now I'm just going to pick through these and get rid of any unsightly ones that have text that I didn't particularly like, or just the ones that were between notes and ended up just being like white little tubes. I will probably use those for something else later, but for right now I just want the music note beads. And here we have the polymer clay colored beads that I made earlier, and we're just going to use these to make some super cool jewelry. I found this elastic material online, and I really like this one for things like bracelets because I think that a clasp is a really big pain for bracelets. Where necklaces it's not as hard, but I prefer an elastic bracelet to a clasp bracelet so that it's easy to get on and off. So for this bracelet here, I'm measuring out twice the amount that will wrap around my wrist. I am only going to actually use one length of that, but I need the extra length of string just to tie everything off and make sure everything doesn't fall off at the end. You can see here I tried to get a sort of double string through the polymer beads, but I didn't make the holes quite big enough, so change of plans. I started with a paper bead, which I did have enough space to get 2 layers of elastic through, and if you just kind of go around the first bead twice, it holds it in place without tying a knot so that you can get your bracelet all strung together without losing beads off the back end. And I like alternating the size of beads kind of evenly so that it folds evenly or kind of curves around your wrist in a nice even way. You don't want a bunch of long beads because then it might kind of poke out in funny ways, but definitely play around and see what your preference is. And always come back and double check the length against your actual wrist if you are the person that you are making this for, so that it's a nice and snug fit at the end. So right here I like the length, and I'm just going to pull out that doubled up bit and give it a nice little knot. The type of knot kind of depends on what variety of elastic you have. This was a nice simple knot and held pretty well for this elastic, but I have seen I have worked with elastics that prefer certain kinds of knots to others, so play around with what you have and see how it goes. And here I'm trying to figure out a way to tuck the ends into the other beads. Again, those polymer beads didn't have the space to tuck the ends into, so I ended up snipping off the extra length and kind of rotating the knot so that it was tucked into that paper bead next to it. And it wasn't actually that hard, and so far for the last couple days that I've worn it, the ends have not popped out of the bead, so it's worked pretty great for me. And there we are, a great DIY project. Or use for those extra music books that you never use anymore. Here's some other ones that I have made previously. I used a gold paint pen to get some of the banding around some of these. So definitely experiment, there's lots of ways that you can make these awesome. And as I mentioned before, check out our Etsy shop for more inspiration and to see what else I've made.
Well, I hope you liked that, and I hope you learned something, and I hope that you try it yourself. If you do, tag us at Braver Creative on social media so that we can see how well you did. And if you want to see another cool polymer clay video that we did some fun 3D printing experiments with, check out the video here. And of course, check out the Etsy to see the other jewelry that I have made with this fun bead stuff. As always, like, subscribe, and comment, and follow for more. See you next time. Bye!